Um, there we go.
Then I
Okay.
have to click that as well. There we go. Yeah. Well, thank you, Kelly, for inviting me to this. This is a real treat. And I see so many new faces and familiar faces. I can't see both pages. I'll go to page 2 and see, oh my God, look at all the people. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. So it's always, um, I never know what I'm going to say. You know, that's the first thing I'll say. I never really know what's going to come out. But what I do know is that I can trust something that we all have, which is this innate health, innate wisdom, our true self, our true spirit, whatever you want to call that. But like many of you, I was never really taught to trust that. I wasn't taught, I wasn't told to trust yourself. I was told to trust experts, to learn what the experts taught me in school, to trust my teacher, to trust my scout counselor, to trust adults around me. But I didn't really um, trust in my own wisdom. And the gift that Sydney gave me, I think, and gave so many of us um, way back when we first started hearing about Sid, was that he kept pointing us back inside to our own wisdom. He often would say, don't listen to me. Don't listen to me. Listen, um, or listen to me, but don't follow me, he would say. Don't follow me. Follow your own wisdom, because that is where all wisdom comes from, is within the heart of each human being. It's interesting. My new book, Thriving in the Eye of the Hurricane, it won't be out till October, and so I'm still in the middle of the editing process. And one of the things that my editor just sent me on Friday was, "Oh, you need to get release from the person who you quoted in the book, which was Richard Bach. He wrote a book called Illusions many years ago. How many of you heard of Illusions by Richard Bach? Or Jonathan Livingston Seagull? He wrote that too. He's probably more known for that. But that story that he tells in the book of Illusions, I tell often to my clients or to people in seminars, because it points to the simple truth that when you really trust in yourself, when you trust in that still small voice within that is there in all of us to guide us through all of our unique experiences, whether we're dealing with the pandemic or homeschooling our children because of the pandemic, or we're going through a divorce or a death, or starting school, or have a new baby, or, life is always full of the unknown, isn't it? Everything in the future is that which is not yet known. So when we don't know to listen to ourselves, I don't know what you did, but I worried a lot. I used my mind innocently to worry and create scenarios to try to prepare for the future, the unknown, thinking that if I just worried enough and stressed enough, that I would be really well prepared. But what I was doing was just creating barriers to really seeing what is happening. Instead, I was reacting to a world I was making up in my own mind about what I thought was going to happen. And so I was often surprised, thrown off balance, disappointed. Occasionally I'd be right. And I go, yes, I know I need to worry. I need to always try to think about what might happen. That's how I can stay safe. Um, so anyway, so I tell this story from Richard Bach's book, and I'll just paraphrase it, as I'm going to paraphrase it in my book, so I don't have to uh, get a release from the author. Um, but it goes like this. Once upon a time, as all the fables start, there was a crystalline river. And in this crystalline river that flowed gracefully and beautifully through the towns and through the mountains. There lived creatures in the water, and these creatures would cling to the side of the stream, for clinging was their nature. It was what they had always known to do. And when they would talk amongst themselves, they'd say, "Oh, don't ever let go of the side of the bank, because if you do, surely the force of the strong river will throw you against the rocks and crush you, and you'll be doomed." But this one creature, someone like you, would often wonder, what would it be like to just be carried by the river? What would it be like? What's it like downriver? What's possible? He would dream. He would dream about what would happen if he let go. And one day he said, "I am so bored clinging to this rock. I'm going to just let go and see where life takes me, see where the river takes me." And the other creatures all around him said, "Oh, no, 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 don't do that. Don't you do that. If you do that, you'll be smashed against the rocks and you'll be killed. And that's really dangerous. Don't you dare." All our fathers and grandfathers and great grandfathers have all told us never, ever let go of the rocks. But he said, "I can no longer. I'm bored. I just know there's something beyond this. This can't be all that there is. So I'm going to let go." "Well, if you let go, you'll die quicker than of boredom," they said to him. But alas, he let go. And when he did, sure enough, the current was very strong there, and it smashed him against the first rock. But he had faith, and he just continued to let go, and the current lifted him up. And soon he was just floating through the river and seeing all these incredible sights and the beauty that was there, and the incredible variety that the river offered. And he was delighted to be free. And pretty soon other creatures along the river further down said, look, it's the Messiah. He flies. He flies. A creature like us, yet he flies. He must be the Messiah." And he shouted back, "I'm not the Messiah. I'm no different than you. I've just let go and trusted the stream." So I love that story, because for me, what it did for me in my 20s, when I was just a 20-some-year-old guy, I planted a seed that there's a deeper intelligence in all of us that we can trust, that we can count on, that we can find our security in that, because it's tailor-made for each of us individually. The divine wisdom of thought, of insight, comes through each of us in our own unique way, tailor-made for your life and your life and your life and each of our lives. And when we get caught up in our fears, we drown out the voice of our inner wisdom. But it's still there. And when we get quiet, when the mind gets quiet, when it settles, we can hear that voice more loudly. And this is the discovery that Sydney made, was the only thing that keeps us from hearing our instinctual knowledge of wisdom, our insights, is a misuse of the mind. When we don't understand the nature of thought, when we don't understand that what we're living in 24/7, like the water for the creatures, 24/7, we're living in a field of thought, of our own thought. And when we have conscious awareness that we're thinking, it's like we let go of what we know, and we're carried with that wisdom. New thought comes into our mind that guides us, that lets us know who's the right mate for us, or whether this is the right career path, or should I just stay home today or should we go for a walk? Should I pick up a dozen eggs at the grocery store on the way home? It's not just the really big things in life. It guides us in the little things, in the details of life. And as what I've found and what inspired me to write Thriving in the Eye of the Hurricane is that as I went through the last year of the extraordinary challenges, not only of the COVID-19 pandemic and all that came with it, with the disruption in our lifestyles, having to wear a mask, having to stay home, having to homeschool our children, can't go out to restaurants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The economy, what happened with our economy, how it divided, our political division seemed to happen, I know in our country and many other countries in the world. We became kind of glued to our Zooms and our social media platforms, and that became the source of our thoughts. And if you believe everything you hear and you believe everything you think, you won't be listening to your wisdom. So a lot of people got lost their mental health. We're in a mental health crisis, they say, in our culture since the lockdown. But people who have had an understanding of the principles, people that I know, whether they're clients or colleagues, as I witnessed how they went through this period of time, they had their moments. I had my moments where I thought, oh God, I don't know if I can stand this. But when I would step back and I would realize, where's that coming from? It wasn't coming from what was happening. It was coming from how I was thinking in the moment about what was happening. And that did something for me. It settled my thinking. I was back to the being carried by the current of wisdom and natural mental health. And I saw that in so many people. So I wanted to write a book to respond to this time of turmoil, this time of great challenge, that there's an understanding that we can count on, that's within us, that can guide us through any unknown, whether it's, and I've interviewed people in hospice who are in their dying bed. They're in the book. I've interviewed people who live in inner cities where there's a lot of racial violence. I've interviewed police officers, I've interviewed teachers, students, doctors, nurses, people on the front lines, who've had the privilege and the good fortune, like I did, to learn how my mind worked, to learn how I create my reality moment to moment. And that's what makes me feel safe in an unsafe world, in an unpredictable world, in a world that we seem to have no control over. Knowing that grounds us in a feeling of deep peace, a deep knowing that all is well even when it doesn't look well, that there's a purpose for this, that there's even though this is really hard, there's something here that's helping me to wake up even deeper to the truth of how life works. So anyway, so that's what I want to say to kick it off. I don't even know I was going to say that, but anyway, that's what came out. I love how it happens.
That's wisdom at its best.
Oh, there's the UPS lady delivering another package. And that's another thing in my life. We've got packages coming constantly.
Are
Hey, yeah, how you doing?
you holding your breath? Is that the book? Is that the book?
No, the book's not out yet. It'll be out in October.
I love that conversation about letting go, and I've been for many years holding on. Feeling my thinking of needing to be the one to hold on. And realizing that it's all okay. It's all okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the best kept secret. You know, um, that everything we've ever looked for is inside of us. Um, and that's been told in many cultures and many religions that the truth we seek is within. The kingdom of God is within. I mean, it's in almost every religion, in every deep truth. Truth has always been there, but we can't always hear it because we're trapped in the box of our ego, of our personal thinking, and we don't know that that's what we're like. The creatures, we're hanging on, and all anybody has ever told us is to hang on. And boy, if you let go, you're really going to be in trouble.
Mhm.
It's just not true.
I was looking at, as I often do before someone like yourself comes to speak, just looking at some of the things that you've shared and the experiences that you've had, because this career has been what I would look at as long and mighty and very full and with change. And you had written many books. And I understand that as authors, people have usually a driving urge to write this book. So, being that you're on the precipice of completion, I'm wondering what drove Thriving in the Eye of the Hurricane. What was pointing you in that direction? Where did that come from?
Well, I never really I never thought I'd ever write a book. To be really
Really?
honest,
Really?
any book. I My belief, my conditioned habit of thinking was I'm really bad at English. I always struggled in school with writing. I was told not to go to college because of my poor verbal and written skills. And so I pretty much bought that I just wasn't good at that. I probably need to go to a technical school or something. But I, I really wanted to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that from the time I was 16. I have the good fortune to, my aunt was a Catholic nun and she was a missionary in Guatemala. Some of you have heard this. And she was like the Mother Teresa of Latin America. She was just an amazing human being and just did so much wonderful work for the poor. She started started a girls' school in Guatemala City. Um, anyway, and that experience when I was 16, just witnessing her and all these other people who were, putting their lives in danger. It was in a state of war at that time. Um, and they freely gave of themselves. And I just, it woke up in me this passion to help people. So I went in the seminary to become a Catholic priest after high school. I thought that's what you do when you're a Catholic. If you want to help people, you go be a priest. But that didn't fit for me. I knew that after the first month or two. And so I decided to become a psychologist. But even in college, I struggled. Anytime I had to write anything, it's just torture for me to do. And I had all this insecure thinking about it. I just, I just didn't feel I had that ability. But when I was 40 years old and I had met Sid Banks 10 years prior to that, um, and Sid said, "Oh, you're going to write books and you're going to travel around the world and you're going to be teaching in universities." And I just thought he was crazy. This man doesn't know who he's dealing with here. But I was teaching a group of counselors at Hazelden um, about the principles and working with training them in the principles to work with women in the women's program at Hazelden, which is the first inpatient treatment center in the world, but it's in Minnesota where I live. And so I was giving this talk at a church, then to a larger group of some of their clients and other people. And this publisher came up to me after my talk and said, "Joe, you need to write a book about this." And I said, "Oh no, you got the wrong guy. I don't write." He says, "No, no, no. You've got your ideas are revolutionary. They're fresh. That you've got a lot to say. You need to write." And I said, "Really? You think I can do that?" And he says, "Yeah, no problem. Just write down what you've been talking about." So I thought, okay, I got to write a book. So I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning because that's what writers do. And I had my outline, and I sat down the first day. This is before laptops. I started writing on the yellow pad, and nothing would come. It was just so 2 hours later, I come back to bed with my tail between my legs. I said to my wife, I'm never going to be able to write this book. This is ridiculous. I can't write. She says, what do you mean? What did you do? And I said, well, she says, what were you trying to write? And I said, well, I was writing the first chapter. She said, well, why did you want to write the first chapter? I said, well, isn't that what you're supposed to do? The first chapter's first, right? She says, well, why don't you write what you're inspired about? And I said, I never thought of that. Yeah, I just went into programming, went into how I was programmed. And so I thought, well, what do I want to write about? And immediately a thought came to me. And I sat down and I wrote 18 pages without stopping. My hands were cramping from writing. And I loved it. And I thought, God, that's writing? Wow. And I fell in love with writing. And then I got a really good editor that could polish my English language and help me learn how to write properly. So I wrote that first book, and I thought, well, that's it. I'll never write another book. But that book was very successful, and it helped a lot of people. And I thought, wow, this is a way to reach a lot more people than just counseling people. And so I was open to writing a new book, but I didn't know what I was going to write. And then my buddy Richard Carlson, he and I met at a convention for the 3 Principles in Boston. And I loved his books, and he loved the Serenity Principle. And I said, well, why don't we should write a book together? And so, yeah, let's do that. And so I said, how about slowing down to the speed of life? Let's call it that. Because a client of mine, the week before, when I asked him, what did you get out of your therapy at his last session? And he stopped and reflected, and he said, I think I've just learned how to slow down to the speed of life. And that's what, out of the client came the inspiration for that book, and that became a bestseller. So that kind of led to my career in writing. But this book, like I said earlier, it was really just, well, here's the real story. So my last book, Fear Proof Your Life, got bought out by another publisher. That's happening. All the publishers are going under, the smaller publishers getting bought out by the bigger publishers. And so my new publisher had me come and speak at an author's forum of other self-help book writers. So it was me and about 10 other people. And everybody was talking about this technique and that technique, and you got to do this every day in your journal, and then you got to do this, and you should do this every night. And it was all these little gimmicks and things. And I thought, God, I don't fit into this group at all. This is going to be interesting. So I spoke last, and I don't even know what I said. It just came out of me, what I teach, like right now. And they all were really quiet. And then they all started clapping. And they said, we want to go to the church of Joe Bailey. And I laughed. I just laughed. And so the next day, the editor-in-chief of that publisher called me and said, we want you to write a new book that will help people go through this pandemic. But we want it to be timeless, not just this current circumstance, but any tumultuous circumstance. And I said, okay, that sounds good to me. And so they gave me the title, Thriving in the Eye of the Hurricane, which I love. It fits because the eye is within us. It's the still silent part. That is the place, that is where all peace and mental health and well-being lives. Even in the midst of the 200 and some mile an hour hurricane of our lives, we can all find that safe place of wisdom. And it guides us through the wall of the hurricane into safety, into well-being. And so that's how it started.
That's a beautiful story. It's a lovely story. I'm curious. You said 40 years old when you met Sid.
So I met Sid at 33. I wrote that book when I turned 40.
Okay, so for those that are in the room that, of course, may just be coming to this conversation, because there's a lot of new people that are seeing the principles now that I keep saying the principles are alive, things are alive. But for what you're doing and for what you saw back there when you were 33, what do you think is different now? Because that was an experience for you that, well, I'm going to ask you, what did that experience do for you when you were hearing
Meeting
what?
Sid?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I met Sid Banks the first time, it was with great hesitation. I was encouraged by Keith Blevins, my best friend from graduate school, to listen to Sid Banks tapes periodically. He would send them to me in the mail. And at that point in my career, I was very burned out. I was very cynical. I, what I was doing wasn't working with patients. I was discouraged. My own marriage had just fallen apart.
My
I
own marriage.
was divorced. Um, I had a successful private practice, but it felt like everyone I was seeing was coming back the next month with another issue and another issue. And it was endless. People were in therapy forever, basically. They were dependent on me, which was a good living financially, but it was soulless. I didn't feel like I was really helping people. I felt like a phony. But so Keith would say, "Oh, there's this whole new psychology, and this is going to transform the world." And yeah, I've heard that a million times. I've where you live in California. Oh yeah, sure, another California trip. So I was just like, I'd push him away. But for whatever reason, one October day, he and Valda got on the phone and his wife and called me and said, Sid's going to speak at the University of Miami Medical School, and we'd really love for you to come and hear him. And by the way, there's this really neat person that we'd love for you to meet. I think you two would really get along. And her name is Michael. And that got my attention because I was always looking for the right woman to fall in love with. That's going to do it. That's going to make me happy if I can just find the right woman. And so that was, I was kind of curious about Sid and more curious about Michael, but what was even stronger was almost like I felt like a magnetic pull, a spiritual pull to do this. And I thought, this is interesting. So I went to Miami and I met Michael that first day, and I fell in love with her the day I met her. And we've been married for 40 years. And so it worked out pretty well on that end. And that night, I met Sid. And some of you have heard this before, but it's always fun to tell it. So we were at Rick Suarez's sister's house, and she fixed this big Italian dinner, and there were about a dozen people. Roger Mills was there, and Keith and Valda were there, and a lot of the nurses that were originally involved in this, Karen Miller, and bunch of uh, bunch of people that had already been, their lives have been transformed by Sid. And then there was me, this cynical, intellectual psychologist who comes in, and I'm just like, what am I getting myself into? But the people really seem nice. And so I thought, well, this is a nice group of people. So after dinner, everyone kind of sat down, and then we were all in a circle, and I was just chit-chatting away. I just, Mr. Motormouth, I was always talking a lot. And trying to analyze people or whatever I was doing, I don't know. And all of a sudden, Sid starts to speak, and everybody else got really quiet except me. And then I realized that everybody else was quiet except me, and so I felt kind of embarrassed, and I shut up. And Sid just starts talking, and everything he said touched my heart. It was like I heard the truth of what he was saying with my heart. but my psychologist brain was having a conniption. It was doing somersaults because everything he was saying was pulling the rug out from everything I'd been taught as a clinical psychologist. It was the exact opposite. And so I was threatened. It really threatened my belief system. My ego was doing tilt-a-whirls. And I wanted to run the hell out of the room if I could have found a way to save face and get out of there without anyone noticing, like a trap door in the floor, maybe if it would open and I could just go down the chute. But I was trapped in there. I was like, oh my God. But after a while, it just, something penetrated that fortress of intellectual, analytical thinking. And I started to feel joy. This feeling of joy and happiness that I hadn't felt since I was a little boy. And I didn't know what was happening, but I really liked that feeling. I felt like I'd gone back to where I started, to my original state. And in spite of my intellectual fortress, I must have heard something, because when I went back home to Minnesota, I couldn't do the old therapy. I would try to say the same things to my clients, and it just sounded like fingernails on the blackboard. It didn't make any sense anymore. He ruined my training. And I thought, now what do I do? Now what do I do? I can't take people back in the past anymore. That's crazy. That doesn't make any sense. But that was what I built my whole practice on. Reliving people's past over and over and beating pillows with bataka bats and getting their anger out and going through boxes of tissues every week, people crying. And but I didn't know what to say to my clients, but every now and then I would say what I was just beginning to learn, to see for myself. And they look at me and as though they had seen a ghost or something. They say, well, why didn't you tell me that before? That's so much simpler. That makes so much more sense. And I said, it does? They said, yeah, yeah. And they'd come back the next week and they were lighter and they're, how are you doing? Much better. And they started improving. My clients were actually improving. And within 6 to 8 weeks, they were done. Thank you very much. You really helped me, Joe. And I go, this is fantastic. This is what I always wanted to do, was help people. I finally found a way to help people. But all of a sudden I had hardly any clients because they all graduated. And I got worried, like, oh my God, this is not a good financial model. This isn't a good way to make a living. The other way, you had clients forever, and this one was like, oh, they actually get well. Oh my God, what am I going to do? But they would tell their friends, and pretty soon I started getting a ton of referrals. Pretty soon I had more clients than I could see. And then, so I brought Roger Mills to town to speak at the University of Minnesota, and got all my colleagues. I had 100 other therapists there to listen to Roger. And the only one that heard anything was Chris Heath, who some of you probably know Chris Heath. And so the two of us decided we'd go to Florida and do an internship. And eventually we had to start a mental health center and train other therapists because we couldn't see all the people. And so we started the Minneapolis Institute of Mental Health and worked with thousands and thousands of people. It was just an amazing thing. Anyway, long answer to a short question.
No, that was great. I find that, no, that was great because I think sometimes my own mind is trying to piece together how you all know each other, how you all came into being, how this grew. conversation by conversation by conversation. And I love how you said they were getting better. Like there was no longer this, see you next week, because there's that place where everyone's going to come to a place of seeing something for themselves that they've never seen before. And as a facilitator for the principals, I I think sometimes I want that for my clients, my people, my participants more than maybe they do in the beginning, where like some of you say about being the naysayer, the one that doesn't see it. And so when you were there and you didn't see it and then you saw it, there's that place. And I think that's where I'm working with people, where they don't see it, and it's just like, just stay the way. Just stay the way. It's all good.
These are self-evident truths, self-evident truth, the principles. And once you even get just a little bit of a clue, you see how it plays out in everything in life. So you've got a constant. So the principles are like a constant that, like in any science, when you have the constants, the principles, you're able to predict outcomes. They're predictive, and they allow you to come back to the principle when you get off track. It's something to guide you. So the principles don't cure us, but they're a guidance, in a sense, a guidance system, like a GPS, a God positioning system that writes us back to the moment, to the present moment, where, which is the only true reality. Everything else, the future and the past, is all made up thought. Past no longer exists. The future doesn't yet exist. But our thought in the moment is what gives us our present moment experience of life. And when we see that, it helps us put the past in perspective so that we can learn from it. There's a lot of valuable lessons that have come along, but we don't live there. We can look towards the future and intuitively sense the direction. We listen better to our instinctual, intuitive knowing about when we need to make a change in something. So the the all knowingness of our true essence, our true self, our resilient being has a very good um, guidance system to guide us into the unknown of this reality that we're living in 2021 here. How we can prosper and um, make life better for ourselves and for the people we love and for the world. We get guided divinely through insight and wisdom to make a difference in the world. And all of you make a difference in the world with the people you touch. You can't help it. You can't help but help other people with your presence. And as you get a deeper and deeper ongoing evolution of your own wisdom and understanding, you, without trying, help other people. You don't have to. I used to try to help people, and that really actually got in the way of helping people. And it was stressful because I felt responsible to fix people and heal people. But when I'm just being who I am and I'm really trusting in their wisdom, that they have that wisdom too, I don't have to put that into them. I just have to remind them that they have that within them and that they too can trust it. And as their thinking settles through self-correction wisdom is self-correcting. It helps see through what's something I'm making up in my head about today or what I think is going to happen versus what is happening. And once we sort through our thinking, we're left with the true reality, the true essence of life, and we're not trapped in a prison of thought. And that's, but I just look at people. Where's my cell phone? I don't have one with me right now, but people are looking at their cell phone all day, and they're on there. You got the headphones on, and they're constantly pouring in information. They're searching podcasts like this one for the answer, and they don't know that they've got a direct line to the wisdom within. And so that's all my message is about. We all have everything we need. We were born with it. We just forgot. We didn't trust ourselves. We didn't know how to listen. Our minds are so full of fear and uncertainty and insecurity that we couldn't hear our own wisdom. And once we even just get a little glimpse of that, we have hope. And once we have hope, it opens our mind even further to see possibilities where we only could see obstacles. We begin to see the aperture opens. We see infinite. Like, I feel so much hope for humanity right now. And a lot of people think I'm crazy. How could you think that? But things are really shaken up right now. It's like the whole snow globe is really shaken up. It's really cloudy in there. But if you just let it go and you let it settle, you see the simple solution in a really complicated world. Like I worked a lot at healthcare institutions with physicians and doctors that have super challenging jobs and threat of being sued by the courts, and operating under all of these strict guidelines and in life and death circumstances, and teaching them the principles. They still have all the wonderful knowledge of their training, but they're able to be present with their patients in a way that isn't stressful, that they really get connected to the patient, so the patient feels they're caring and that they're really listening to them. And so they're not as defensive, they're more cooperative. And it just makes for a good doctor-patient relationship. I have a whole chapter on healthcare in my book, and talk about the research we did at Mayo Clinic on the physicians and the nurses that learned the 3 principles paradigm, and how it dramatically changed the level of burnout and stress of the healthcare providers. So even in the most complicated, challenging situations, wisdom is there as the guiding light to utilize your knowledge in a way that's actually helpful and to not suffer in the process. Same thing with police, working with police and firefighters, teaching them the principles. They see more clearly how to stay calm in a life-threatening crisis. Because when you're calm, you think better. You're more responsive to the needs of the people you're helping. If you panic, your mind shuts down and you don't see clearly what to do, and you make mistakes that could cost a life. So this understanding, as simple as it is the missing link. It's the missing piece in our world. And the first part of my book is called We're Living in Interesting Times. And I go through the history of scientific evolutions, scientific breakthroughs. Were often preceded by a pandemic like ours, or other, like the great wars in history, that when people were really shut down and in turmoil, it was often when they went back inside to reflect on what's missing here. What do we need to do? And for me, thriving in the eye of the hurricane is about the next evolutionary step humanity needs to take to understand the proper use of the mind, so that we can use it to create a really beautiful new world that's already available to us. We just, our thinking has gotten in the way because of a misunderstanding of thought. Well, I want to hear from you. I'm jabbering away here as usual.
No, it's been a great, rich conversation for me. I'm going to just turn on gallery view. And yeah, do you want to open up the room for
I'd
conversation?
love I'd love to hear from you guys what you're seeing and what you're hearing and how this has helped you. Unmute yourself if you, or do you have them raise their hand, Kelly, or how do you do it?
If you want, yeah, I can generally see most of them. If you raise your hand, you'll come to the top of my screen because there is two screens.
In the raise your hand in the chat thing.
Yeah, whatever way they want, or just unmute.
Oh, hey, it's Brenda, and I've been off my phone because off video because my daughter's been wandering around. I am new to the conversations. Thank you for your speaking this morning. Thank you, Kelly. Two things and then a question. The ancient yogis in India, you take them a goat or a chicken, and you go and you get healing, and you're done. And that's what's so great about the principles. It's like you do them and you're done. And it's magical, and it's like many for me many paths, same destination, as long as you get with it. There's a wonderful movie when you said All Is Well. There's a really wonderful movie called, the title translation isn't great. It's a Bollywood movie, and the translation is Three Idiots. And it's the supposition that when you get present and you pat your heart and they repeat, all is well, all is well, all is well. And I just was taken back to that moment because I feel, I'm struggling with a 16-year-old daughter who doesn't want to listen to me. And that's why this morning the video off, and I needed to be kind of present with her and present here too. And that's not always easy. When you say, Joe, what we reminder, like where is that place within you that you find that the intuition, that moment of like where does it come from for you, like in your body, like finding that the oneness, like the glimpse, the glint of hope, or the glint of where is it for you?
Well, I don't think it's a place like in my thorax or something. It's for me. It's when I get when I'm in a I have a 16-year-old grandson, and when I get in a dizzy about him sometimes, because he's a challenge. He's all over the map and struggles in school, etc. And I know when I'm reactive to him, I can be aware that I'm being reactive, like impatient. God, I can't believe, what's he thinking? That frustration as a grandparent, watching someone do something that you can see where it's going, what's going to lead to, and they don't see it. And so for me, just in the moment when I recognize that my frustration isn't coming from Tyler, it's not coming from what he's doing, it's coming from how I'm thinking in this moment. And in that moment, I don't have to really do anything. Just the simple recognition that I'm thinking and creating my reaction settles me. It kind of gets, because otherwise I feel at the mercy of his moods or whims, or my wife's, or whomever, the grocery store clerk, doesn't matter who it is, a client. When I see that, it does something for me that helps me calm down. And that's the word. I get at peace. I get in the moment. My head clears. There's a million ways to describe it, but it's just it's thought falling away, and what's left is maybe a feeling of seeing his innocence, feeling compassion. I'll tell you a quick story. So one of the doctors I was working with at Mayo, after attending our seminar that Keith Blevins and I did, he was working with a patient. He was a liver transplant specialist, and he was doing a consult on a very difficult young man, maybe in his early 20s, who was going to die if he didn't get a liver transplant. And they'd been to Johns Hopkins, and they'd been to Harvard, and his final resort was Mayo Clinic to try to get him some help. And so this doctor got the file, of the patient, which was about that thick. And in the notes, it often said, "Be careful of the mother. She's really obnoxious. She's really difficult to deal with," etc. And so he was kind of preloaded before the intake with the patient that the mom was going to be annoying. So sure enough, she comes to the session with the patient, about a 24-year-old man, and he asks the patient questions, and she answers the question. And he's starting to get bothered, irritated, annoyed, and he's about to ask her to leave the room so he can do his proper intake with the patient. And then he realized that he was annoyed, and that annoyance wasn't coming from her. That was his thinking. And he said, what that did for me is it just shifted the whole dynamic. I thought to myself, God, if that was my son and he was going to die if he didn't get a liver transplant, I'd be asking a lot of questions too. I'd be probably more annoying than her because of my fear and my love for my child. And then my heart went out to her, and I didn't say anything, but she just changed. And in his perception of her, she looked like an ally rather than an annoyance. She could help him see what to do with the patient. And he said, that showed me the power of the principles. That all the times that I get annoyed and bothered and frustrated, it isn't coming from out there, it's coming from in here. And he said, I knew this was a scientific breakthrough. He said, this understanding is like huge. It would change medicine. 54% burnout rate of physicians in this country. I don't know what it is after the pandemic. I'm sure it's gone up. That's 2 years old. That's over half physicians are burned out. So the simple experience of seeing yourself as the creator of your experience in the moment clears your thought system to make room for wisdom to see fresh. And that's what this is just like the best vaccine for mental illness in the world. It's the mental illness vaccine, and you don't have to get it in a shot. You get it in a shot with Kelly Mabel. the Kelly Mabel shot.
Partnered with the beautiful Jill Bailey.
Well, you too. You know, whenever we share whatever we know, whatever we've realized ourselves, whatever any little bit we share that we think is nothing is profound to someone who hasn't seen that yet.
Yeah.
It's profound. So it's in the sharing of our own insights that we pass this on to other people, one interaction at a time.
Shall we have a couple more hands?
Yeah.
Linda, thanks, Brenda. Linda.
Hello,
Brenda.
everybody. Thanks so much, Joe and Kelly. Really, really impacted by lots of things that you said already. But my question comes
There
really.
you are. I was looking
Hello
all
there.
over the place trying to find you there.
My question goes right back to the beginning when you started talking about how you said that you weren't taught to trust yourself, and it was about trusting the experts. And I can see that it's still the same in our educational system and the way that we bring children up. It's about what you learn and what you do and what you achieve and all of those things outside of us, rather than who we are and trusting enough to let go of the side of the riverbank and just float on down. Are there any words of wisdom that you could share that might impact how we can bring kids up differently?
Well, I think as a teacher or as a parent or anybody who's working with kids, if you can see what's innately resilient about them versus what's wrong with them, that's extraordinarily helpful. We're so quick to diagnose, label, put a category on a child, thinking that that's going to help them. But when you label someone, and if they buy into that label, then they confine themselves to whatever they believe that label is. So, you know, as a clinical psychologist, I would diagnose people in order to get the insurance company to pay for it, you know. And I never really totally bought into the disease model even before I learned the principles. I always thought that was very limiting. But it's a really powerful thing to believe you are a diagnosis or a personality type or a difficult child or a hyperactive child, or it doesn't mean that children don't have hyperactivity or dyslexia or, you know, different ways of learning and all that. And it doesn't mean that there aren't people who aren't really depressed or alcoholic or all that. But that's a description of their behavior. That's not who they are. When I work with drug addicts and alcoholics, I remind them that who you came into the world as your true self, the true essence of who you are, is indestructible. It cannot be damaged. It cannot be broken. It cannot be tarnished in any way. It's fully there and complete. Now, you have some behaviors that have gotten you here to this treatment center. You drink too much alcohol or you use drugs in an unhealthy way, but that's not who you are. And when you begin to listen to your wisdom, you'll make better choices. You'll see more possibilities. And if you don't, and you make a mistake, you have a slip, that's an opportunity for you to gain a deeper understanding. Sometimes my wife wrote her first poem on a match book back that simply said, "There are no mistakes, only the revelation of the inner self." So when we have a mistake, like making a movie, just take two. You make it better. So you have mistakes, you fall down, you fail a test, you get in trouble with the law, whatever. If you see it not as you are a bad person or a failure, but life is showing you something, it's trying to wake you up. You're getting feedback. You're getting a feedback loop about your thinking. And when you can see that every misstep, mistake, is life painting us into a corner where the only way out is up, where we must see it from a different perspective. We need to get some deeper thinking than what we've been using, because that thinking is getting us into trouble with the law every so often, or I'm losing all these relationships, or I can't keep a job, but when they come to me, they're blaming, oh, it's every boss I have is a total jerk. I don't know why. I just have to finally quit, and they don't see where their experience is coming from, innocently, totally innocently. And so they blame the outside, or they blame their disease or their diagnosis. Oh, I can't help it. I'm depressed. I can't help it. I'm schizophrenic. I can't help it. I'm an alcoholic. Well, that's ridiculous. That's not true. You're not, in essence, an alcoholic. You may be someone who abuses alcohol, but who you are in your essence is a child of God. You're made in the image and likeness of God. We're all divinely created. We're all perfect. We have this essence. The spiritual essence of who we are cannot be damaged, because it's not of this world. It's not in form. And when you begin to identify with who you really are, rather than your habits, you're free of the habits. And that's kind of a deep thing, and it's very simple, but it's really powerful when I could see I wasn't my panic disorder, my anxiety, that I was just caught up in my thinking. That changed it gave me my freedom back to not take my thinking so seriously. The way because I had a diagnosis of anxiety disorder. Basically, I worried all the time about the future. How am I going to do? Am I going to pass the test? Am I going to graduate? That was just a misuse of my thinking. That's all it was. And when I saw that, my anxiety went away. Now, I still have moments when I feel anxious. I'm not superhuman or anything like that. I still have the same thoughts I used to have. They just don't get any traction. I just go, oh, well, I don't really know what's going to happen. End of story. We'll see what happens. And when I go, and when I go into a new situation, knowing I don't really know, but that's okay, I'm available to see in the moment, and I trust my wisdom will guide me.
Is that helpful, Linda? Did you hear something there?
Very much so, yeah. I think there's been such pressure almost, and over in the UK where I am, especially with education, there's so limited resources. I think parents are almost desperate to get an extra label, a diagnosis for their children to free up more resource so they get more attention and more support. But actually, there's a wider understanding about that's so needed from both sides. And I think you covered that so thoroughly. Thank you.
Well, and there's so many wonderful programs in the UK for kids, K through college, teaching these principles to teachers and to counselors and to students. That iHeart out of London is a wonderful resource for you, but there's many other programs. The Spark Initiative in Florida. What's the name of the program in Canada? I'm blanking on my guide inside. That was just a wonderful curriculum that Barbara Onst and let's see, help me. Who is it?
Krista.
Yes.
Krista Cancel. Krista Cancel. Sorry, Krista. Yeah,
Right.
Krista Cancel developed, and there's a lot. There's all these programs, and there's others too. But yeah, so, when some people who heard the principles, they thought, oh, the kids need to hear this, and they developed programs.
Mm-hmm.
So from your own transformation, you naturally want to help other people, and so if you're a teacher, you develop curriculums to help kids learn that you can trust your guide inside. Another way of saying it, you know. Um,
Okay.
and there are many. There's not any one particular one that's the end all. You come up with your own creative intelligence to find ways to help kids. But you don't have to reinvent the wheel either. There's a lot of other programs already made, really well tested, documented, researched, that are very effective.
Thank you.
And I have a whole chapter on education and kids in Thriving for the Eye of the Hurricane, interviewing all those people.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. We have a few more hands, Joe. I'm going to go to
Yeah.
William, please. I think, William, you were next.
Oh, there's 3 people up there with their hand. Oh, it's so nice. They're right up there on the top too. Hi, William.
Hi. I just, I'm enjoying what I'm being drawn toward. And I see that, and it's like this place that who you are just keeps coming. I was going to ask you about your experience with the Lyme disease, where you made that shift and how these shifts keep happening. Then I have this image of myself living in my shadow. It's like painting myself into a corner, and I'm so embarrassed about what I've painted. And I just see that there's something so powerful when I'm so centered and so attracted to that center in somebody else. And I get so distracted by my thoughts and about their thoughts. And so I'm caught up there, and I just feel more and more it's like a magnetic pull inside myself to more who I am, because I don't even know who I am. It's that not knowingness that's becoming more and more okayness. And so,
there.
yeah, but when I listen to you and the complete trust that you're having in who you are, that's what really communicates. I mean, that's, to me, it's almost like the words disappear. And I'm just feeling that connection. And it's the same thing when I look at people who, when they smile or laugh, in that moment, something's happening in the moment. And I want more of that. I want to experience that with myself and them. So it's just, I see when I work with people, I don't remind myself enough and trust enough, just that good place inside me, in them, and let that do the talking, the work, the connection.
Mhm.
Just keep listening to that in some way. So I just wanted to share this. I've loved every time I listen to you. I like the way your humor kind of rolls out of you, and it's a good feeling that comes with it. And that good feeling is where is the attraction. I just want to say all that.
Well, William, I was very much as you describe yourself most of my life as well. I was very self-conscious, and even though I was a psychologist, I was always second guessing everything I was thinking, and I just and that's why I was so drawn to Sid, was that I knew he knew. I kind of feel the way you feel about me towards Sid, because he knew something that I didn't know. He was so completely confident. He had so much certainty in everything he said. And I knew he really knew it. It wasn't just believing it. It wasn't just a good thought. He absolutely knew it. And I wanted that knowing. I wanted to know that. But it's been a gradual process of ongoing evolution for me for the last 40 years. It didn't come like that for me. It was very, and I've had lots of challenges along the way in my life. And each challenge or obstacle has, because I understood a little bit of the principles, it allowed me to go deeper in my understanding. So when I got Lyme disease, for example, I thought I was dying. I didn't know what it was. I hadn't been diagnosed. I thought I had cancer. I didn't know. I just was in so much pain, and my brain didn't work anymore. I couldn't think. It was like I had dementia. And no energy. I just didn't know. I was scared, and I went to all these doctors, and they gave me all, and this is many years after I learned the principles. And then eventually I was diagnosed with what they call Lyme disease, a parasite, and got good medical help and good treatment. But my mind was still identified with that disease. So insidious. I didn't know I was doing it. I started thinking of myself as I have Lyme disease, right? And so when and this was a person who knew nothing about the three principles, but he said to me, tell me what your problem is. And I said, well, I got Lyme disease. And he says, well, don't ever say that you have that. And I said, what do you mean? And he says, well, every time you say that, with your mind, you send that signal through thought, through every cell in your body, and then you suppress your body's natural ability to heal because you're telling it it's sick. And I said, oh yeah, I've written several books about that. I know what that is. And he said, no, you don't. You don't believe me. And I said, well, yeah, I know. I really believe this. And he says, no, you don't. I said, well, how do you know that? He says, I can see it in your face. You don't believe me. And I was insulted. It's like, yes, I've been, this is 35 years after I met Sid Banks. And so he kept talking and going on and on about the quantum field of the body, the energy of the body, and this and that and the other. And he says, do you believe me now? And I said, well, absolutely. I totally agree with what you're saying. No, you don't. You just think you do. And I said, well, why do you say that? I really do. And he says, no, I can see it in your face. You don't believe me. And then all of a sudden I got this humility, and I just realized I don't know what I'm talking about. And then I could see all the thinking I was doing about it unconsciously. I was worrying all the time about if I get to get sick again, and when am I ever going to get over this? And I was just it was so invisible to me. It just looked like reality. I thought it was just reality. No, it was my thinking. And at that moment, I saw it, and it just collapsed. And he looked at me and he says, "Now you believe me." And I said, "How do you know?" And he says, "I can see it in your face. You believe me." And he was right. The next day, I woke up, and all my symptoms were gone. It was like a miracle. I had all this energy, and my brain worked again, and I didn't realize how innocently, it was a blind spot, fear of death, big one, fear of death. That brought me back into my old habit of worry that didn't look like worry, it looked like reality. That's how subtle thought is. So there's no end to discovering and rediscovering the truth. And we're all human. We can all fall prey to our thinking. It's not evil. It's just innocent. It's just innocent. So that story has helped a lot of people, because a lot of people suffer from severe illness and a lot of pain, um, and the most. It doesn't mean that I didn't continue to take my medication or do the things that my medical doctors told me to do, and still do with my diet, etc. But I'm not living in the fear of it. I'm not identified with my diagnosis. And I know my body knows how to heal itself.
And it feels like at the center of all that is a feeling that I had the first time I heard Sid, but wandered away from it. And that was, oh, I'm okay, just the way I am. And I feel that's the center point. And I hear you, and I just appreciate hearing this story again, because it's just such a powerful reminder of being okay. So thank you.
Yeah, and I still have blind spots, Bill, or William. I still bang into things on a regular basis. That's just part of being a human being. We're susceptible to the thoughts when they come in the head. They turn into perception instantly, which is what we call our reality. You can't stop that, but you can be aware that you're creating it through an insight, not through an intellectual belief, but through an insight. It can only come as an insight. Believing that it's just your thinking doesn't do shit. Pardon my French. Just, if you just turn this into a belief system, it doesn't really change anything. You have to see it insightfully, and you can't make an insight happen. This is where humility comes in. You can't make yourself have an insight. It's not like, I don't have an insight. Oh, really work at this and get an insight. No, you have to just completely let go and forget about it and trust that an insight will come. And come it will. You got to get out of the way. You got to let go of the side of the stream and let the stream carry you. Mind, universal mind, does all the work.
Thank you.
Yeah. Jim, you had
Yes,
your hand up too.
I do.
Go ahead.
Jim, go ahead.
The thought
Is that Pam there?
I know Pam passed away.
I
about,
didn't know that. I'm sorry.
2013. This is my present wife, Rosalind.
Oh, hi, Rosalind. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you.
I don't know where this fits in, Joe, but it's a thought that's occurred to me during this session. And it deals with the biggie in terms of who am I? What am I doing here? What is our purpose in life? And the answer that I've heard and I believe is it's all about this gathering of insights, which is the way that we find out that we are gaining in our consciousness, that we are raising our level of consciousness. And along with that, we enter life as that infant at a certain level of consciousness. And our purpose is to raise that level of consciousness. That's the purpose of life. And when we pass, we will be at a higher level of consciousness than when we came. And it's all up to us how far we grow, how big that leap is in consciousness, in awareness. And that's what I wanted to share.
Yeah. That's the game of life, isn't it?
That's it.
Sid said it's a contact sport.
That's right. It's the universal question.
We're all here to wake up.
Yeah.
Wake up from the daymare.
Thank you, Jim. That's lovely. I know Annette, is she still here? She had her hand up for a while. Annette, did you want to still say something? I know if you're, yeah, there you are.
Yeah, I'm still here. Oh, there's just been so many beautiful nuggets of wisdom, and several has come to my mind during this sharing. Knowing that I'm okay just the way I am, and which ties me back to what you said, Joe, about surrendering, being able to surrender just to the unknown and not really knowing what will happen, what's always the next best step. It takes off some of the pressure of planning and trying to figure everything out in my head, and just being able to surrender. And during the past couple of years, I think this understanding has been so helpful in that respect, of not tying too much importance to the result, but just surrendering in a way to the moment and to what wants to be created and what happens, without really knowing where it's going to take me. And it's taken me down a really interesting path that I had no idea I was going to go down. So that's been really interesting. And then another thing that came up with, you said that you had been, worrying all your life about, this and that. And I haven't been so much a warrior, I don't think, growing up. But as opposed to that, I think I have been I've been carrying this badge of honor for being really busy. And so to be able to access this space and this space inside, this quiet space inside, has been really difficult, and at times really is. I can often, when I think of it, I don't think I can find it, but it's really comforting to know that even if I, and I look to have insights, I want to have insights like everyone else, and especially when you hear about all these big life-changing ones, it's just so comforting to know that wisdom is always there. So the wisdom is carrying me, even if I don't have insights, even if I don't see everything.
No. You can't really try
clearly, or there.
You can't really try to have an insight.
No.
It doesn't work that way.
I know, and I guess it takes me away from having one in a way, trying to have one.
Effort works on a lot of things. You can really effort your way to clean your house, or you can really effort to make a lot of money. But effort to have insight, it's the best kept secret. It's like the snow globe metaphor we often use. You shake the snow globe, that's effort. You set it down and finally just surrender, you let go, you give up. You really don't do anything. You just set the thing down. You just lay it down, and then it gets clear, and then you see the next step. So like when Kelly introduced me in the beginning of this program today, and he said, well, I'll just turn it over to Joe and you just do whatever you want. And I had a moment there where I felt, oh shit. I had an oh shit moment.
Why do you think I turned it over to you? I was in an oh shit moment.
Oh, okay. So I had my oh shit moment right along yours. And I went, oh, wow, I have no idea what I'm going to say. I have absolutely no clue. And then I remembered, oh, I don't have to know. It always works out. It always works out.
It
And but that old habit immediately whoosh, came in. So it's like all of us have cancer cells in our body. Some of us have cancer, but we all have cancer cells in our bodies. Science shows that. But when the body is in homeostasis, your immune system is strong, the cancer doesn't take over, but there are cancer cells there. It's only when the body immune system loses its balance that will take over. So it's the same thing with habitual thinking. You can't, unless you get a lobotomy, you're not going to get rid of your old habits.
I think I could use
And
it.
I don't recommend it.
Joe, I have to just say that we've come to the end of our time.
Oh, we have. Okay. Well, that
I
went fast.
I just think this was really. There's sometimes that I do have that, oh shit, what am I doing? And with the link and things this morning, I was a little off my game for a moment. But I just have to say that there's sometimes when I can really fall into the room where all the logistics and things that I'm doing behind the scenes just fall away, and I get to really be present to this conversation. And today was one of those days. There was so many rich nuggets that I just stopped everything and listened and just really present. And you have this gentle, kind, very deep-rooted calmness in you that I am so attracted to, and I just want to thank you so much for bringing it to my room. And I want to thank everybody for being here with us, for coming and taking the time. And before we go, Joe has some things that he does, some really cool things. And Joe, I know that you've got your Mind Matters business letter and a few other things, but maybe you could just enlighten the room on some of the stuff that you've got coming.
Yeah, if you go to my website, you can find out what I'm doing, joebailey.associates.com. But I have a monthly newsletter with a video. I do a video blog every month, and it's also written up. If you sign up for my mailing list, excuse me. But I also started a podcast series every third week. I do one. The first one, and it's called Thriving in the Eye of the Hurricane, as a way to help let people know about my books coming. So the first one was with Beverly Wilson Hayes. It was a fabulous session with her. And then the next one was with
Louise
O'Dalier, and a woman, Debbie Milam, and Teresa Walding, two nurses, and a woman who was going through a dying experience in hospice. And it was super powerful, especially Debbie. All of them were really incredible, but that was very touching, as she's got 24-hour nursing care. She's on oxygen, and she's talking about how the principles, she's in absolute peace internally as her body is shutting down. It's just beautiful. And then I do one tomorrow. I'm going to interview Hannah Studley and John Elmocum, talking about living with chronic illness, thriving in a chronic illness, we could call it. And Hannah also just went through the war in Israel and is going to talk about her experience, being in a bunker and losing friends in that war, and how the principles helped her with that experience. And then the next one's with the Beyond Recovery Boys and Jacqueline, and just lots of Michael Neal. I'm going to interview people who are in my book. I want them to tell their story, and then after I've gone through everybody who's in the book, when the book is out, then I'm gonna ask people who are getting something out of the book and want to share their story, and I'll interview people who've just read the book and their lives are transforming. It's all about, we're all in the transformation train here. We're all about transforming to who we already are, and that's what life's all about. So it's wonderful talking with all of you and listening to all of you. Hi, Philip. Good to see you again. My dear friend Philip from Sweden, my new friend. Philip.
He makes himself around, doesn't he?
He's everywhere. He's everywhere. And there's Tony. There's Tony. Hi, Tony. And Sharon Strimling, where'd she go? Is she still here?
Had to go,
She
unfortunately.
left. Okay, yeah. Lots of.
Thank you all for being here, and thank you for the service you give and the gift you give to all of us, Joe. And you can see us all next week, same time, same place, and we'll be having the lovely Rick Rippenath. Oh, so we'll see you next week, everybody. Take care. Stay
everybody.
cool. Get out of the heat if you're in Vancouver, and much love. Bye for now. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
William, actually, I want to talk to you.
Hi.
Hi. I'd like to connect with you if I could for catch up and just have a little unfolding of some of the principles with you if you'd like to do that.
I would love that.